the best intros are those that I do not plan. So
Yeah,
we are recording now, and
great.
we tried recording yesterday, but I messed up the sound. So now we are here again.
Round two. Yeah,
But welcome. I'm a big fan of your channel, Rewire The West, and it's a new channel. Can you just tell us a little bit about the videos that you have already posted?
yeah, of course. So the mission of the channel is to help other people, specifically those in Western culture, rediscover beauty, truth, and virtue. And so far, I've made several videos about that. I think that beauty is incredibly important. I think it's something we've lost. I think it's something that helps us rediscover meaning. It helps us actually rediscover virtue. And, I've spent the idea was actually birthed from some idea spent from some time spent living in Europe, where I just felt completely overwhelmed by the nihilism and saw so many of the kids dragged down by that. And I think in the States we're a little bit behind that. That's what we're moving towards.
Hmm.
But in the meantime, I see it as something that's coming up, and I've really wanted to create something for the kids of this generation that can inspire them to look at some of the greatest works of Western culture and be inspired to create some of their own.
Yeah, exactly. And I'll just read some of the headlines, some of the titles
Yeah,
of
of
your
course.
videos. For instance, uh, The Viking Road to Wisdom, Desecration of Modern Art, Beowulf and Toxic Masculinity, um, Hamlet's Guide to Overcoming Fear,
Mm.
and also a favorite of mine, Low Wages, Bitter Cold, Complete Darkness, Shackleton's Guide to Overcoming Adversity. Um, you know, when when I look at today's modern society, I'm not a big fan of today's modern society, even though
Yeah.
there are great things, that we have now, of course. But
Hmm.
we're not very. Uh, we do not want to accept that life has, you know, adversity.
Mm.
We will encounter adversities, and how do we overcome that?
Yeah.
Can you say a few words about that from the male perspective?
Yeah. Well, I think, adversity, like you said, I believe this as well. It's baked into life, it's inherent to life. We're always going to encounter adversity. And some of my videos dive into this topic from a male perspective, specifically talking about what, strong masculinity can look like to help us overcome adversity. And I think that strong masculinity, it doesn't look like comic book characters and, big guys who go to gyms. It's something more internal, and it's something that really is what society needs. It's something that provides leadership, provides guidance, provides meaning, and overcoming adversity. Again, we all have it in our lives. In terms of overcoming adversity, we need to channel some of that to be able to, when difficult situations come up in life, we need to be able to know how to manage those and do it while maintaining dignity, and do it while creating a better future for what we leave behind.
Yeah. And I want to jump straight into a concept that I forgot to bring up yesterday.
Okay.
Um, in lack of better words, I would say it's uh, bounce back time.
Bounce back time?
Yeah.
What do
How
you mean by that?
how long does it take? Well, it's easier for me to say it in Norwegian, but how long does it take before you bounce back when you have a
Mm,
setback?
yeah.
Um, it's very unrealistic to think that, well, I will not be affected by this at all.
Mm-hmm.
But because we are human, how long does it take for you to bounce back to your hopefully strong and confident self?
Yeah.
It's a skill that you can practice, to shorten your bounce back time. I guess English speaking people would have a different term for this, I guess. But for me, it looks like some people, they do not bounce back at all. And they're quite okay with just blaming the world out there for everything,
Yeah.
which is something we're also going to talk a little bit about, blaming others. But you mentioned Europe. Norwegians like to view themselves as not really that European. We're Norwegians.
Yep.
We're outside of the continent, but I should say I have the same perception of parts of Europe. It's very urban, it's very civilized, it's very I don't know. I don't have the word for it, but it's there is something there that I don't like. And also, when I travel, when we were back in the old days, when we were allowed to travel, whenever I traveled to those places, the people I met there were usually not at all like that, so
Yeah.
that's funny, But yeah, let's talk a little
So
bit. Yeah, no,
I want
go
to
on.
just touch real
Yeah.
fast on your idea of bounce back time and kind of how one rebounds. I think that's cool. You're right. Some people do learn to bounce back, and some never bounce back, and they just kind of blame the situation and what's going on. I do think that learning how to bounce back is certainly an acquired skill, and it kind of goes in line with the concept of anti-fragile. And being anti-fragile, it's events that are difficult for us and stress that's applied to us that can actually make us stronger. They do not weaken us over time. They actually strengthen us over time because they make us more robust. And so I, again, kind of going on what you said, this is a skill that can be cultivated, learning how to bounce back. And I don't think a bounce back looks like you start from one point and you're down and then you just go up and it's never looking back. I think it's almost like an economic curve where there are big ups and downs, but on every swing up there's also a smaller wave. And so it kind of goes up, down, but it's the gradual term of it is up. And at least in my own life, in order to cultivate that skill, I've learned to, whenever there's a down moment, to not stress it too much and to not to say to myself, "Oh, I'm not bouncing back like I want to." It's better to just accept it. Hey, this is going kind of tough. Accept it, move on, know that you're going to go to bed. Tomorrow morning is going to be a better day. And just learning how to be resilient in that sense. So absolutely, I think it's a skill that can be learned. A really cool concept too.
Yeah, and another concept that I was lucky enough to learn about when I was a much younger man it was actually a blog post that I read,
Mm-hmm.
and I can't remember who wrote it, but he wrote something that I've never forgotten,
Hmm.
and he wrote, "It never stops. Being a man, being responsible, it never stops. You will always have difficulties." And one thing I've read also in uh, what's it called? A Blade Runner novel. Do androids dream of electric sheep? Isn't that what it's?
I'm not sure. I'm
I
not
think
sure.
that's the title now.
Okay.
And me with names, I can't remember the name of the author, which is really embarrassing. But anyway, I think it's in that very short novel that he has this concept, again, my memory. I don't know. The
Are you
Keeple.
saying
The
the
Keeple.
Blade Runner novel?
Yeah, yeah.
Is that Philip K. Dick?
Yeah, it's here somewhere in the mess. I have books everywhere. So,
Okay. Yeah, yeah.
um, yeah. But anyway, isn't the concept that he used the Keeple? Isn't that the Keeple? You can't stop the Keeple. The Keeple will
Hmm.
be there. It's mess. It's everything disintegrating. It's things falling apart. That's
Hmm.
nature. Maybe I remember the word correctly, but the concept of accepting that the world is not order,
Hmm.
it's your mission to bring some order to your life. It's a very
Absolutely.
good concept, and you must accept that the world around you wants to fall apart. Everything
Hmm.
wants to disintegrate and become chaos. It's
Yep.
not true because there are certainly order in nature, but this concept has also helped me a lot. But most of all, I would say that accepting that it never stops
Totally.
is, yeah, because
And
especially when you're a parent, it never
hmm.
stops. It never stops.
Yep. And I would add to that. I mean, I certainly agree with what you're saying. I would add to that that our mission's to bring positive order to that. But if we're not bringing healthy order to it, someone else is bringing negative order to it. And what I mean by this is, I uh, I actually just finished reading Paradise Lost by John Milton, and in it, when Satan travels to Earth, he
Mm.
goes through chaos. Hell is situated basically at the bottom of chaos, which is kind of like the void, and then there's Earth outside of that. And the first time he goes, he has to navigate through chaos by himself. But when he's coming back, he builds a bridge. And basically, chaos freaks out because, and it gets super mad because Satan kind of betrayed it by creating order through it and creating a bridge. But what I mean to say by that is, I thought it was a cool way of looking at life in the sense of, if we are not instilling our healthy, hopefully productive, positive order into, our children, our family life, our world in general, our community, then someone else will be instilling it potentially in a negative light.
Mm.
They can be instilling negative principles, negative ways of viewing the world. Chaos does not just remain chaos forever. It can be constructed either in a positive light or in a negative light.
Can you talk a little bit about Shackleton?
Hmm.
Because he certainly had to bring some positive order into the situation.
Yeah. So this video that you mentioned, the low wages, bitter cold,
Mm.
hours of complete darkness, it is the story of Ernest Shackleton, who, for those who don't know, this English explorer went to go traverse the Antarctic, and the expedition just turned into this complete failure. And brief overview, they had to live on the pack ice for almost 2 years, really, and then managed to get to dry land, but then it was uninhabited, so they had to sail over 800 miles, and the rest of the details are in the video. But just this unbelievable story of resilience and putting order into a place that has zero order at all. And it takes leadership. It really takes a bunch of leadership. It takes a determination, going back to what we said originally of, life is tough, and kind of accepting that there are going to be challenges, but we have to become resilient. You know, in his situation, it was literally life or death, and he had 28 men to take care of. And so it wasn't, you know, let's go and just blame nature. Let's blame the ice for breaking our ship. Let's blame the
They
hurricane
could have blamed
force
each other as
winds. And,
well.
excuse me?
They could have blamed each other, the
Yeah,
men,
they could
the
have. They
crew.
could have.
Yeah.
And but they did not. They, said, look, complaining isn't going to get us anywhere. And so they had to just band together really tight, and he had to have strong leadership to take these men through and survive. All of them survived, which is remarkable. But actually, what you said about, they could have complained. In fact, two of them really did, and two of them were really negative guys. And what's interesting to me is that when they were on this small uninhabited island and they were about to take this lifeboat to sail over 800 miles to the next one, there were 6 men who went in the lifeboat, and Shackleton took the 2 troublemakers with him. He could have taken 2 really other qualified men to help make that journey, but he took the 2 troublemakers because he said, if I leave them behind, these other 22 men, they're not going to live. And
Hmm.
he knew that because he knew that they would zap the the spirit, the morale of the people who were staying on the island. And so he actually took those 2 troublemakers with him, which I thought was just an incredible stroke of leadership, really.
Absolutely. And now we're going to talk a little bit about masculinity as well. And let's just dive straight into the whole mess with toxic masculinity.
Hmm.
The infamous Gillette ad and all that mess. Let me first say that I do get where they. I do get the point.
Hmm.
I do get the point. They wanted to say that these parts of being a man, that's not good. That's toxic masculinity. But the way it was done and the way it was presented was that so many parts of masculinity are toxic, they say,
Hmm.
that there's virtually nothing left. And I disagree with what they're saying about, for instance, here's my one of the dogs. Hey. I disagree with with most of what they're saying, but being strong, being taking initiative, even aggression. Aggression is necessary to succeed, but it doesn't need to be a negative thing.
Hmm.
Of course, I'm not talking about violent aggression. And all of these things those are now portrayed as toxic. So, what do you think about this?
Yeah, I think again, I think there's certainly people out there who are bad people. It's not that every man is perfect, but masculinity in my mind is not in and of itself toxic. I think there are so many positive forms of masculinity when it's channeled in a healthy way. And if I can use this analogy, I don't know if this is a great analogy, but I'll go with it. It's kind of like testosterone in the gym. I think going to the gym and working out is a great way of being healthy. It's a great way of when you do work out, it boosts your testosterone in a natural way. It helps you get out stress. It helps you, become stronger. It helps you become more resilient physically, which also helps you become more resilient mentally. And that's what, in my mind, if I can liken that practice to healthy masculinity, all the masculine traits channeled in a positive light. And toxic masculinity is almost like you're taking steroids. It's when, yeah, steroids increase testosterone as well, but they do it with just a slew of negative side effects. And really the result is something that's unbalanced, off the rails. And so that to me is what toxic masculinity is. It's when these specific masculine traits are just super invested in, but without regard for all the others. And it's an unbalanced form of masculinity. It's not as productive, and really, it's a shortcut. I think that I say this in the Beowulf video. I think that a lot of toxic masculinity is people who they abuse strength to stay in power. They fail to take responsibility for their actions because they're able to shift the blame onto others. Whereas again, this healthy masculinity is embodying masculine traits, traditionally masculine traits, but in a way that's very balanced, in a way that brings order not only to your life but allows you to bring that and share it with your community as well, but doing it in a very natural, healthy, organic way.
Yes, absolutely. And um, I tend to view the guys who are standing there in front of the mirror with their very unnatural muscular development
Mm-hmm.
uh, as boys. They're not men.
Yeah.
And we see this boyish behavior being called toxic masculinity. Now, if you are 16 years old, you're supposed to behave like, you know, a 16-year-old. But
Yeah.
what we are seeing now is that because the mature man is ridiculed, and for other reasons as well, it's not really. We see a lot of men never becoming men, if you know what I mean.
Mm.
They might be in their 30s, but they are still living their lives as boys.
Mm-hmm.
With that, I believe toxic masculinity can follow. Toxic masculinity, those traits, to me, it's irresponsible behavior towards women, obviously,
Mm-hmm.
irresponsible behavior towards your career, your spiritual development, if I may use such a word. I'm not talking religion now. Your your health, you know, your physical health, and a lack of respect for people around you and nature as well,
Mm.
I would say. It's like when I go up, and I want to mention this.
Yeah.
When I go up here in the woods during hunting season, I will always find lots of rubbish. I will find campsites where they have just dropped all their rubbish, empty bottles of vodka.
Right.
I'm not kidding. And beer cans, and they've just torn down the trees. It's it only happens during hunting season. This is not
Hmm.
because I'm not saying this because I'm against hunting, but it seems that the hunting season attracts these boys who should not be boys, because
Yeah.
I don't think those are very young kids. I think they are men
Hmm.
in their 30s, 40s even. I
Yeah.
don't know this, but I suspect that a 16-year-old kid would not bring vodka bottles up into the woods. Maybe
Yeah.
I'm naive, but hey, that's what I think. And this behavior is toxic. It is
Mm-hmm.
toxic behavior. You might call it toxic masculinity, but masculinity is about something else. It's the opposite, I would say.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of that is in terms of these men who should be men really being boys at heart. I think part of that is because there's no there are opportunities to avoid responsibility in society. I will say that.
Hmm.
We're fortunate enough to live in a very wealthy and prosperous society. If you live in the West, you live in one of the wealthiest societies that mankind has ever known. Because of that, however, we're not faced with the daily hardship where responsibility is thrust upon us whether we want it or not. There are, in fact, ways of going through life avoiding responsibility at every step of the way. And I believe that's what probably most of those boy-like men are in. I think that's the position they're in, is they've been managed to shirk responsibility at different stages of life. And that's the result. They've never had to, again, take on that responsibility, construct, bring order to their world, and do so in a meaningful and productive way. And I think that's the reason that they are like they are.
Yeah, and I, I I I feel this is very important actually, because we need to encourage young men and even boys to
Mm-hmm.
become real men.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say real men, most people now, I suspect, they envision this 50s, 50, cowboy movies in the 50s and 60s, man.
Yeah.
That's not what I mean. That's actually boyish behavior in we're seeing there. But becoming a real man is about taking responsibility. It's about being strong, building your strength
Hmm.
physically, but more importantly, mentally.
Hmm.
It's about taking care of people around you. It's about thinking about things like, what about having kids? You know,
Hmm.
your bloodline, and
Yeah.
um, and we need to be honest about the fact that this is part of being a man. It doesn't
Hmm.
have to be. I'm not saying that you have to have kids because if you don't, you're not a man. I'm not saying that,
Yeah.
but it's a natural part of most people's lives. We need to be
Totally.
honest about this. I can't remember anyone saying anything to me when I was a kid about becoming a man.
Yeah.
Not in school, nowhere, which is a
Wow.
shame.
Yeah. It's so I work a lot with kids. I've done a lot of stuff in kind of education, maybe middle school age, and it's definitely scary at times to see what they're being brought up on because a lot of the kids I work with, they grow up watching YouTube videos of other people playing video games.
Mm.
And I just can't believe that. Like that is their aspiration. And it's not these, great men of society. It's not they're not looking at, the greats, maybe even the controversial greats, Caesar, Napoleon, whatever you want to say. They're not looking at these people who have shaped the world or the explorers. It's like they're looking at people playing video games, and that is what they are a lot of them honestly aspire to. And it's tough. This is where I'm going back to what you said. It's tough to shift that conversation to, well, what about being a family man? What about doing this? Again, with middle school kids, it's not like you're saying, hey, are you ready to have kids? They need to grow up. But you at least want to provide an example of, hey, this is what that can look like.
Mm.
Not all masculinity is looking at and watching people play video games. Masculinity is more than that. It's not about being a star on TikTok. It's about, again, being this positive force of influence in your community, in your family, to future generations. And I believe kids need to see more examples of that.
Absolutely, and it's like you can put two people next to each other, or
Hmm.
in front of some kids, and one, let's say one is one of those steroid guys from the gym that you mentioned. He
Yeah.
has he don't have any steady relationship or anything like that. He has a sports car and a certain attitude towards women. Uh, the guy next to him looks quite ordinary. What you don't know is that he has been working very hard to pay down the mortgage on
Hmm.
the house and to save up some money for his kids to go to. You call it college? College?
Yeah.
Yeah,
University, college.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah. Um, who is the man of those two? Ask those kids. Who's the most masculine guy here?
Mm.
You know what they will say, and that's why we need to talk about this. That's why we need to be honest about what masculinity really is, and
Hmm.
that there is something called positive masculinity, and masculinity as a trait, is positive. It's a great force of good. Um, so yeah.
Yeah. And I think, too, maybe someone might say, well, why are these masculine traits? Why can't this be egalitarian? Um, it is in some degree, but I just say that, men have this, I think, this really internal ambition, this drive to really get stuff done. I'm not saying that women don't have any of that. I'm just saying that it's very, and most all the guys I know, it's very inherent, and that energy has to be channeled in some way, and we can either choose to channel it in positive, constructive avenues, or in, again, these negative or fanciful, kind of fleeting things like a sports car, a steroid body, lots of sexual encounters with women, but no stable relationship. Whereas, again, we need to prop up this one option of, I think it's awesome to invest in a house, get a mortgage, have some side hustles, do these things, have a stable relationship. The people I know in my life who are doing that are really amazing individuals, and I love that. They have all this energy. It's got to get out somehow, and they're doing it in constructive ways. And I just think it's so positive.
Yeah, and I want to bring up one other thing as well, because especially in the MGTOW community, you've heard about
What is
that?
that?
M- um, Men going their own way. It's
Oh,
sort of
I've
a
never heard that.
now it's sort of a movement. I would
Okay.
say. I won't get into the definition of that, but
Yeah.
I can just say that lots of men they point at women,
Hmm.
maybe women in their 20s, and they're saying, well, you have to hurry up and find a man because you can't fool around, and the clock is ticking,
Hmm.
and your biological clock, that is,
Hmm.
and you will once you get into your 30s, you will be ugly and no one will want you. uh, okay, um, let's just put that over here for a while,
Yeah.
or let's just put it here and not talk about that. But why is not the same true about men to a certain extent? Now, I won't get into the whole relationship thing. Of course,
Hmm.
men doesn't need to be pretty, and are men are usually seen as attractive even if they are somewhat older.
Hmm.
But what I'm talking about here is there is a biological clock ticking for men as well. There is a
Hmm.
financial clock, if I can say that, ticking. There's a
Totally.
career clock. We are also subject to time. And if you're playing around, acting like a boy through your 20s, into your 30s, chances are you won't have a very successful life. That's the harsh truth.
Totally.
And especially those people I have discovered, those people who criticize women for, well, maybe rightly so, for fooling around. Everyone must do what they want, but
Hmm.
they do have a point. But they fail to see themselves sitting there playing computer games in
Yeah.
their mother's basement. I'm being a bit cruel now, but I'm trying to make a point here, and and we go through phases in our lives, and that's just how it is.
Hmm. I think that's actually a really nice point. I'm gonna have to use that later on. It's not maybe, okay, we don't have ovaries, so we don't have that biological clock, but there are other clocks that are ticking.
Mm,
And you can't, gosh, I mean, an unproductive 30-year-old guy,
mm,
like, what is he to society? It's that might be harsh, um, but it just becomes so so strange, and kind of growing up. This was so weird. I was sitting in the car the other day, and I was waiting for a buddy. We were meeting up to go walk in a public park. And I was sitting in there, and I just thought, I have to, if I'm just some random dude in a car, if I were 16, I'd just be, oh, some 16-year-old kid sitting in a car. But now if I'm in a neighborhood sitting in my car and like a parent walks by, maybe they're like, what is this man
Oh,
doing sitting in this car in our neighborhood? You
yeah,
know? And I would be skeptical of that too. If I saw that, I'd be like, what is this guy doing?
yeah,
And anyways, it struck me as this moment of realizing, like I'm not seen as a kid anymore. Society regards me as a man now, and so that comes with a different set of expectations and responsibilities. It really does.
yeah, absolutely. And it's like I'm all for people. People must do as they want, but
Mhm.
and live the lives they want to live. But I think we need to be honest about consequences. I would like to see more consequences actually in today's society, and
Mm.
more honesty about those consequences. I have seen men. Now I'm 48, so I'm old enough to have seen guys who never got to start their life, their adult
Mm.
life, and
Mm.
and when they discovered that, well, I'm 40 now, and I'm still living like I did when I was 20. Uh,
That-
by then, it might be too late because they might not be attractive
Yeah,
to women, at least not the women that they want. You know,
that's true. That's true. Yeah.
so 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 we need to be honest about this. And also, I was, I I I I want to say one thing about masculinity and toxic masculinity, because I've heard that young men are now afraid of walking
Mm.
over to a girl in a bar and starting a conversation and trying to, get to know her better. They,
Mm.
they they're afraid of that because it's seen as toxic masculinity in many
Mm.
places, and it's really horrible. I mean, that's a natural thing, and
Yeah,
that's what you should do in when you're at that age, in my opinion. S-
totally.
But yeah, that's not a good development.
Yeah, it's almost in some cases it almost seems like the digital dating apps. I'm not blaming all of society's woes on them. I'm just saying that in terms of those things, they've almost replaced the natural interactions. Now,
Yeah, of course.
maybe in some
Mm,
circles, again, I don't know how it is. I don't do this often, but I have a girlfriend. But if you're just walking up to someone and you ask them out, that should be a fairly normal thing. At least it was 20 years ago. But now it's almost like that'd be weird, and you have to first contact them or find someone digitally and send direct messages, and it's just like that. It's so counterintuitive. It's like the digital replacing what should be the normal human interaction, really.
yeah,
And we shouldn't lose touch of that.
yeah. Well, I don't have a smartphone. I haven't had a smartphone for, is it almost a year now?
Nice.
I'm never going back. Never going back
Yeah.
to having a smartphone. And I forgot about the whole dating app thing, because I've never
Hmm.
used one. And but you're right, of course. I understand that's how things are done
Yeah.
now, and I agree. I think it's not a good development,
Hmm.
because if it's like Facebook, um, which I'm not a big fan of course. It's like it's not a real person. It's an Instagram. It's not. It's a an image of what you want to be, right?
Yeah.
And what
It's
you
very
want to show the
curated.
world. So,
Hmm.
and what happens then? I wonder when they meet the person in real life. will they not be disappointed?
Exactly, exactly. Or when you feel that this is my biggest hang up probably with the dating apps is that you feel like you have a million options. And if someone doesn't meet your requirements on this scale, you're just like, oh, well, I'll go find someone else super fast. And it's just like real life isn't like that. You don't have a million options. And
Mm.
people are imperfect. It's like you said, when you meet a real woman, are you not going to be let down? Well, yeah, you always will. And in some case, you know, no one's perfect. No one's this ideal version of what you want them to be, but it's learning how to live with that. And, you know, surprise, we aren't either. You know, you're like, you know, we're not the ideal thing. But it's learning how to live with that. That's the magic of real humanity in real relationships, honestly, is that you say, hey, you know, I don't love you because you're perfect. I love you because I love you. And it's not, you know, it's not because you're this model and you achieve everything that you set your mind to and all this stuff. It's something deeper that's actually more beautiful in my eyes. But it's learning how to live with that.
Yeah, exactly. You know, people are insecure. I think we are
Mm.
all to some degree insecure. I'm myself. I'm not. I'm. I don't feel any insecurity anymore, but that's because of age, I think,
Hmm.
and because most things in my life are settled. But I can remember when I was younger, I was a lot more insecure, which
Hmm.
is natural. And for the young men listening or watching,
Yeah.
I would say that you must remember that that pretty girl that over there, she is insecure as well. Um,
Hmm.
you don't become secure just because you're beautiful. That's not how it works. On the
Yeah.
contrary, I would say.
Hmm. Totally.
But yeah, we're going to wrap this up and keep it not too long. But do you have anything to add? I have one thing to add. Of
Okay.
course, I forgot to say the link is, of course, in the video description to your great channel.
Thank you.
Everyone, go there and subscribe.
I
But
appreciate that.
do you have anything you want to add?
Man, yeah, obviously really enjoy the conversation. Again, super appreciate what you're doing. I just say to anyone who's listening to this, don't really know where you are. We've talked about masculinity, kind of resilience, all this stuff. I think a lot of this, honestly, and this is what I try to focus on with the channel, a lot of it starts with beauty. A lot of it starts with finding something beautiful in life and focusing on that because beauty itself implies a standard and to a standard of excellence. And excellence itself implies virtue. And so you don't get virtue without beauty. And so if you're trying to imbue any of these things in your life, start with beauty. Start with, you know, an enthralling story. Start with something meaningful. That can be music, it can be art, it can be whatever that is for you. And if you do that right, I really do believe that everything else in your life will start to fall into place. You know, the virtue, the character that you want to have, that'll come. It'll come, and it starts by focusing on something beautiful.
Hmm, absolutely. I want to thank you for those very, very wise words. And thank you for taking the time to coming here and having this chat with me. Um,
Of course.
Again, link is in the video description, and you won't regret it. Lots of great videos there, great content.
Thanks so much.
Okay, and
All right. See ya.
everyone, have a nice day. Bye.